Hello, everyone. I'm moving my microphone, so if it cuts out, I'm sorry. How y'all doing today? Hey! It's another exciting episode of the Daily Brief here at TRI. Suppose we have to do the formal. Welcome back to the RationalInvestor.com's Daily Brief. Party. I guess we're hat traders today. Actually, it's kind of funny because, ironically enough, I am wearing a hat. Hey, so I guess I am a hat trader. Thomas was making jokes here. Not quite sure what the joke is, but I hope I wasn't the blunt end of it. Anyway, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the frivolity. And as you can sort of tell, Brian's getting a little giddy here. I think I'm already starting to get into vacation mode already. So a little flightied here today, but having fun with everybody. And speaking of everybody, we've got our crew here today. I love working with these guys. Solid professional job. I'm not going to touch that, sir. All right. So moving on. Introductions. We've got the mayor of Vienna, Alex, driving the bus, being the man. How you doing this morning, Alex?
Hey, Brian, all jellied up and ready to go.
Is that Scottish salmon jelly? Is that actually? I think that's a delicacy somewhere. Anyway, great to hear that you're doing well. And we'll have another exciting, action-packed episode. And an FYI for everybody, I am going on vacation. I'm sure you probably heard me talk about this last. Next week, I'll be sort of officially gone. And Alex, of course, is going to be driving the bus. Thomas has actually told us his availability, so he's on the call in my steed, guiding you guys through the markets for a good portion of that time that I'm away. We also have a couple of really cool presentations. In fact, one gentleman who put together just an absolutely awesome presentation on the little old lady strategy. Josh was here in the call this morning. So ironically enough, when I get back from vacation, I want to, that's probably one of the first videos I'm going to want to watch is his presentation. As well, I've had some really good talks with Riza and his crew. So they are just basically just about ready to go with their education program on building automated trading systems to integrate things like signals. And speaking of which, it's really interesting. I'm watching my little algo right here. I'll actually get issued a buy signal if the 1 hours turn back up, which would trigger my alert system here. Taking Riz's course, he'll teach you how to translate just, signals that are generated off of scripts like TradingView and actually have the computer trade them. So super stoked about that coming down the pike for all you guys. And I know a lot of you, of course, are very computer oriented. So that should really speak to you. I suppose before I go on much further, we should introduce our co-host here today. He's here. He's the man. He's calling the Fed and future interest rate. Gave him a big shout out on Twitter today about I saw others in the market seeing exactly the same thing he was talking to us about yesterday, the spreads of forward contracts for Fed funds and Eurodollars. How you doing this morning, Thomas?
I'm good. I'm trying to, for some reason I got logged out of Twitter, and of course I forgot my password because I make it like 100 characters with a billion letters and symbols, and every time I log out, I can't remember the damn thing. So it's the most secure password ever, but the problem is it's so secure. Exactly, and I'm not going to save it anywhere. But
well, I could give you a visual. Here was the and actually it's a really interesting read. Like, for those people that are really interested in economics, these people did a really interesting study of forward Fed funds futures, spreads, what short paper is sort of suggesting. And it dovetailed really nicely with what Thomas was talking to us about yesterday. So I tweeted that out, and that's really what the whole purpose of the tweet was, is I wanted to get that out to the community. I did see yesterday there were a few people that were very interested in our conversation, although we kind of thought we were just rambling. So, by all means, with what Thomas talked about yesterday, and I also included that chart of the spreads. The teal is the euro dollar, the euro dollar spreads, and the orange line is the Fed fund future spreads. And that idea of contango, where basically the spreads are painting a positive price going forward, and what that sort of implies for sort of market expectations for short-term interest rates going forward. So really, really cool dovetail to what Thomas was talking about yesterday. I don't know whether you can see this or not, Thomas, but basically gave me a big shout out there because I was very impressed with the fact that the educated class was validating basically exactly what you talked about yesterday. So really cool.
Yay, I was right about something, maybe. We'll see if it actually comes true. I really need to start. I guess I should start tweeting out these things because everyone's like, what? Why does the CR investor keep mentioning this BTC Patho guy? And he doesn't have anything on his Twitter.
Oh, that's funny. You're just you're my secret weapon.
I really am. No one has any idea what the hell's going on with me. Sometimes I don't either.
Well, and we're all students of the market, and I do know that you spend a lot of time research. You really like those macro voices guys. You like listening to those podcasts. Thomas was in the. And actually, maybe we should just talk a little bit about that. We had a nice options club meeting yesterday evening, doing some fantastic research into various different pharma names. And Thomas was telling us about the different drugs and stuff that they were working on. So, I absolutely love how you really embrace this whole idea of being a student of the market. And you're always learning, always growing, always getting better. And it, frankly speaking, it's an absolute privilege to work with you, dude. You're so top notch, very pro.
I'm happy to hear that.
Maybe this is does anybody know what this sound is? That was me just pulling my nose out of your butt.
It sounded like there was KYC jelly involved at least.
Yeah, that wasn't lubed up. That's why it was such a sticky situation. Let's not go down there. I'm not Brian. Just okay. Calm down. All right. So good morning, everybody. I'm sure the ladies are going to be like, that's a pleasant image. Thanks, Brian. All right, let's I've got you on my screen. I saw all the Twitter kids we're getting all excited about a huge move. All right, I've got you on. Isn't that interesting? I saw all the Twitter kids.
Is that you?
All excited. Yeah, my YouTube page is going all crazy here. All right, sorry about that.
I'd appreciate if you'd put yourself on mute, sir.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't I? Okay. Wow, what a crazy start to the day. Sorry, everybody. Okay, Thomas. And when we have Thomas on the call, he actually keeps me on course and heading in a good direction. So why don't we pass the wheel off to Thomas here? And Thomas, where the heck are we going today?
All right, so we're going to play a little drinking game. Everyone that's listening, whenever either myself or Brian says Fed Day, you have to take a shot or a drink, because I can imagine this is going to come up a lot today. So first drink, it is Fed Day, and that means that we're on pause here waiting to see how everything's going to react. We looked across a lot of the broader markets yesterday and a lot of specific names that really just looked like they were on pause, waiting to see what do we do from here. Everything is trying to take its cue as far as where is Fed policy going to be for the next couple of months. We're in May, the whole sell in May, whatever it is.
Well, Cave Bear just said, I think his Fed Day was the drinking term, but if it's just the word Fed, then you guys are screwed.
No, can't be Fed, because everyone's going to be passed out in the first 10 minutes.
Adam's already taking 10 drinks here.
Are you coming to Vancouver? Because we could have that'd be an interesting time. Anyway, so where should we start?
China, and don't get China.
Yeah, there's another one. All right, so I
Yeah.
guess we can start out talking about earnings. And Apple had a very positive report. They're up about 6.6% today. Wall Street was very much enamored with the idea that they're not just a one product show and they're getting strong sales figures out of other, all their other crap. And hey, this thing broke to new highs here and right into a reload zone. Look at this giant gap up here. I mean, does it make any sense to be buying this thing? I sure as hell would not. This thing beat earnings by 4.25%. And hey, I mean, it's no surprise that you have to kind of understand something. Over the last, call it since January, when all these companies reported in, end of January, February, even beginning of March, there was a lot of talk about earnings recession, and a lot of these companies aren't going to meet expectations for the year. And a lot of market analysts were like, we may not go into a market recession this year, but we may go into an earnings recession. And a lot of people were picking up on that. A lot of traders were looking at these big companies and seeing them as having issues for the rest of the year. Now, the one thing that I think a lot of these analysts overlooked is that once these companies came out at the beginning of the year reporting their really crummy earnings, for the next quarter, they had to adjust their earnings estimates lower than they were before. And that in of itself should have been picked up by all these analysts, and it wasn't. And people thought, okay, this is going to continue. But when you adjust these earnings lower and the estimates lower, it makes it that much easier for these companies to beat expectations when things look slightly better than they were in, say, a January, a February, or a March, when you have an accommodative Fed policy.
Well, and especially too, like Apple is a consumer products company. So today's earnings is all about what? It's all about what happened at Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
So, like the quarter reporting at Christmas is going to be the quarter before Christmas. So to expect a consumer electronics company that, kids are like, oh, I want the iPhone, I want the sexy, latest, hottest product. This quarter following that Christmas, they're reporting the Christmas sales, and you got to expect it's going to be pretty good. But what I find fascinating about this is I remember us sitting back in like December, January, looking at those gaps up top and going, those gaps are going to be filled in at some point down the road. And here we are. I mean, frankly speaking, I don't think anybody expected it to happen this fast. But, gaps like to get filled. The interesting thing, of course, is this monster gap that they're leaving today. At some point, it's going to want to get filled in down the road. Yeah, sorry, my 2 cents. I'll shut up now.
I mean, yeah, right now we're seeing things just go into the reload zone, starting to lift off into areas that would be interesting to short if we see the stock market slow down, if we see, based on what happens on Fed Day, what happens for the next couple months. Is this really going to be a continued dovish Fed, or is the Fed going to change their tone? And, well, we don't really like how quickly markets have moved. It seems like we need to be very much hands-on and make sure that things don't get out of hand, and we don't want to see the economy overheat. If that happens, then it's a total shift in the tone that they were taking just, in January. And I think it's just going to throw everyone for a loop. I don't think they're going to do that.
Data coming out, though, is just, it's like a train wreck. So yeah, it's really interesting to see the stocks are pressing higher. S&P's trying to move to new highs. I don't know whether the Dow's broken out. NASDAQ's moving to new highs. And yet you actually read the data. And if we have Jamie on in the near future, it'd be really cool to get his interpretation of ISM. I mean, it's just flirting right now. I think 50 is the magic number for the ISM. If we're below 50, it means the economy is actually contracting. And I think the latest report was like 51. Housing data just came out, absolute train wreck, really bad numbers. So the irony of it all is that we're in a really odd market state right now, and very classic of sort of end of cycle kind of move. Whoa, is that your transports?
Yeah, that Head and Shoulders just broke down.
Yeah, so that disconnect there, that's bothersome. Something's not right there. So if anything, that's probably sort of pretending that, it's a little bit dangerous for us to get a little too bullish here ahead of the Fed. We got to let the Fed do its thing. You have to let, and maybe a nice little quiz time for everybody. I see there's a bunch of people over on YouTube who can answer the quickest. How long should we wait before we make any sort of conclusions about what the market's going to do after a Fed announcement? 1 hour. Thank you, Will. And also take a shot, Adam. Adam's going to be on the floor here fairly shortly.
I'd even argue, Brian, from the last Fed announcement, it took a full day for the market to to digest what the Fed was trying to say. So,
yeah, could be. And the problem is that the Fed sometimes outfeds the Fed, and then the Fed starts thinking about Fed policy moving forward. That only the Fed can really start thinking about what the Fed's going to do. There you go, Adam. Have fun.
Yeah, I think Adam's bottle is officially empty now. He's gonna have to run out to the store to get another one.
Thank you, Robert. Robert Fisher got it on YouTube. 1 hour. So the magic rule is, and I've seen a lot of sort of markets gyrating around here today. Let's not read too much into price action here ahead of the announcement. And if anything, I'm a little concerned that, I don't like that the market is so strong heading into the announcement. That's usually not a good sign. So usually, if we're looking for stronger market following the Fed announcement, we actually want to see market weaker. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. All right, what are you looking at? Russell 2000. Can the Russell 2000 break out to the upside? Oh, it's just sitting there asking whether it wants to participate in this, eh?
Yeah, I'm like super, super tempted to take just one little position short, whether that's through the Russell on this IWM, which is a little bit more affordable to play, or if I play something like the SPY. I'm probably more inclined to do the Russell. I don't know if I'm going to take this position before Fed. I may. But I just, it's May. It probably doesn't hurt just to have like something the equivalent of a protective put on just in case a bunch of my other positions take a dump. But I'll toy around with that after the brief here. But what I did notice was really interesting is that we have sort of this disconnect again between our dollar and our gold and silver. And I really don't know what's going on with this. We've got the dollar down and we've got gold and silver down for the day, which is very uncharacteristic. Like not so much of a big down day for gold, but the SLV, I mean, this thing just took a dump today and for no apparent reason. Like I can't figure out what the hell's going on with this thing other than technical reasons, but I sold my position today. After this thing started dumping, I was like, you know what? That's enough. I had 8 days left after I rolled it from April. So I was going to expire next week. And at that point, I was sitting at like 3 3/4 times my money. And I'm like, all right, that's good, right? If this thing does bounce into Fed day, and this is just an opportunity for people to go along, because I think a lot of traders are going to be looking at this market and they're going to be looking at this as a buying opportunity and not as much of a sell, right? Like we're filling this big gap in right here. Now this is finally filled in. It almost makes sense that a counter trend rally may come in before we go all the way down into this sort of lower threshold on the SLV. But, Willie still has some room to run to the downside. Any kind of potential divs, this thing's coiling, right? You get 1 or 2 up days, and this thing might actually validate to the upside. This may need a lot of time just to put in structure, but the SLV does not give nice signals up and down. It's almost like the VIX, where you get sort of this weird looking W and weird looking M tops. Like I entered the market on this move here on February 20th, this kind of island looking top kind of thing here. That was where I got my fill, and I've been sitting in that position until today. So I'm happy to finally unwind this thing because, just the slightest move in that position, it was just the position was getting so big in profit that I was like getting a little anxious. So I just closed the whole thing out, that was nice to see. And I'm actually thinking of taking the opposite end of this trade now. But I have to be very cognizant of how the dollar performs going forward here, because, and this all depends on what the Fed does today. Is the dollar's going to
That's
go
the weird
crazy?
thing, eh?
Yeah.
Sorry for the interruption, because the dollar's getting its ass kicked.
Yep.
Which, like we're seeing the econs coming out and they just look horrible. So it makes sense. And then your comments yesterday, the market seems to believe that the Fed is done. Has this AB equals CD finished? I don't know. It looks to me like there could be some more to the upside, but the dollar's getting smashed. And this is the weird thing, because I'm looking at the gold and the silver, and I see the silver getting its ass kicked, but gold's just sort of sitting there. And I ask myself, what the heck's going on here? And then I go back to my currencies, and I see, and I don't know whether you've bought into this argument yet or not, but I see that the yen is actually rallying here. And actually, me personally, I found that when the yen rallies, US dollar is weak, that actually helps gold. So I don't know whether this is, is there something specific going on in the silver market itself? They've got somebody caught or something. I don't know. But it really is interesting to see how the gold market's just sort of sitting there not doing anything. Anyway,
yeah, it is. But the other thing that's interesting as well is that the gold miners caught a bid today, or the short gold miners, that Dust ETF.
That Dust, yeah, it's been rocking and rolling, hasn't it?
Yeah, this thing caught a bid. It actually broke higher. This thing looked like it was going to put in a market structure top, but this thing's maybe got a little bit more gas left in the tank. But you can see reload zones are sitting right in between where we are now. So maybe another buck or so to the upside. Into the 24 handle, maybe high 23s. But there's also a gap right in here. Maybe it's going to try and fill that in. But I don't see this thing breaking much higher beyond that, right? If the dollar's going to, right, so this is, the thing to understand about this, which is confusing, is that this is the inverse proxy of all the gold miners. So if you want to short the gold miners, you buy the Dust. The Dust is sort of the inverse inverse long proxy. And then the problem is, if you buy options on this, you're kind of buying a derivative of a derivative of a derivative, and it's like, what's going on here? So, I mean, if this thing does continue to move up, that means that there's still this inherent weakness in those gold miners. But I think we're getting close to the end here. You can see Willie's getting overbought, not quite any kind of cool bear divs. Maybe this needs a couple more days to build this part of the MACD where you get kind of this other mountain that forms and it's a little bit lower than this previous top, and then we roll over. That may take a couple of days here, but again, all depends on what happens today. So I'm looking to unload.
I just pulled up all the big gold stocks, so I'm just wondering who the hell's driving this thing. And it's interesting how Newmont for years and years and years used to be the biggest, the baddest gold company around. And I think we were even talking about some of the junior ones have some cheeky little gaps. So I don't know whether you can see my screen, but considering that maybe that Dust is rallying up in to fill its gap and is going to run into resistance. It's interesting how Newmont is finally coming back down to this gap level here. And we're now actually below value on this thing. So, I mean, new shorts, I don't know whether that's such a good idea. And new longs on that Dust, I don't know whether that's such a good idea. I think this is probably, we're coming into sort of, the end of this move, and which is ironic. Because as we come into the end of this move, we're probably going to see volatility pick up. And, of course, the media is going to be talking about the gold stocks are collapsing and sell everything. And, of course, they'll get the public to sell at the bottom, which is always nice.
Yeah.
But it would be just interesting if maybe we'll have Dav around. He loves these conspiracies. But I wonder if is that a relatively news release? Yeah, that is. That's yesterday, eh? So these guys bailed out of their silver. Maybe that's one of the reasons why price is tanking here.
But this looks like they reduced it during the first quarter, and this news agency is getting this report from a SEC filing, which is reporting that they came out of this last quarter. So I don't really think that this is really the news driving it. But let's see, did they buy back in? They bought a new, Wallace bought a new stake in iShares during third quarter, valued at 5.4 million. This is all old news, and then they boosted its position by 4.7 in the first quarter. Yeah, that's the only thing.
This is classic. So they come out with a news release, right? So it's sort of sell the rumor, the market dumps. There's the event, and now we're coming into that end of that move. With regard to your silver, and I think I sort of said this morning. I still feel very comfortable that this bear EB equals CD has to be hit. But now we're talking about like literally, sitting at, 69.70 and that target's 45. So we're literally talking about 20 cents here now. Long and short of it here, this is closer to the end of the move than the beginning of the move.
Yeah.
I think it's a little too early to buy for a guy like me, but way too late to be a seller.
Totally. Yeah, I'm not going to pull the trigger on a day like this, but it depends on, again.
And then, long and short of it here, you made money on your trade, and I think it was a very healthy profit. So congratulations. That's in order. You booked a nice profit, booked a nice win. Way to go.
Yeah, and it was the first time I ever rolled an option out for another month and didn't have to pay out the booty for it.
Yeah, well, journal that market experience. I don't know whether I would have done just a month, but maybe it might even be an idea. It's a little late now, but congratulations on your trade, and you were threading the needle there, buying one more month at a time.
Yeah. It was definitely not an SOF trade by any means. This is Mr. Crazy.
Well, hey, a profit is a profit is a profit. Congratulations.
Thanks. How's the VIX doing today? Because we saw that thing spiking a little bit yesterday, trying to put in a W, and it didn't, because this thing retreated off of its highs. So we're trying to put in real structure. I mean, you can see on the line chart lots of little Ws. I'd like to see this confirmed today, like it looked like it was going to confirm yesterday, and see this thing really break out. The fact that this is pointing higher before Fed, I mean, that's an interesting tell in of itself, that volatility is up in a market that has a positive spin on the Dow and the S&P. That to me is really, really interesting. I mean, who do you believe here, the Dow, the S&P, or the VIX? I think the traders are getting a little antsy going into this meeting today. So if something does come out, this VIX is going straight up to $15 today. If it's something really nutso that the market wasn't expecting, this thing could easily spike 10% to the upside, and that would be nice for me.
If you look at this is the ProShares VIX short-term futures ETF. I mean, these crazy ETFs and all that kind of stuff. But I got to tell you, just looking at this chart, look at how we're below value here, and you can see that actually, I mean, there's really not a lot of interest down here. There's a lot of room to the upside for this trade to go. Probably man. You should be looking at calls on this thing.
I know. I'm already in them. I've got July dated calls, but I'm like dying 1,000 deaths watching these things go down by like a penny every week, and the position's not even close to dead, which is fascinating, because I think on any other option, my position would be worth 0, and this thing's only gone down about 35%.
Well, probably people, especially the option boys, look at this and go, "Man, we better not discount this thing too far," because, that's the hallmark of the VIX, is that you can see the entire bull run here lasted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days. Bam, right? I mean, and then this move, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. Bam. And then this one right here. I mean, so these moves can be extremely violent, very quick, very fast. And I don't, like if I was a market maker looking at this chart, I wouldn't want to just discount these options, because you could easily get your head handed to you if you start making them too cheap.
Yeah. Oh, there's one thing that I think is important to mention that I think a lot of people have neglected here, and that is Mr. Professor of Economics is officially broken down today. I mean, if this isn't a
copper in a while,
if this isn't a tell for the health of the broader market, I don't know what is. But this thing looks like a disaster going into a Fed meeting.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're right. Gee whiz, that looks horrible. Huh. And the interesting thing is that this actually is where the sell in May and walk away expression actually comes from. It comes from the copper industry.
Well, today they definitely took their cue right on time.
May 1st, eh?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? I just clued into that. Yeah, you're right.
We're like, fuck it, May 1st, everyone sell and
Everybody
leave
out
the
of
office.
That's great. Yeah, good point. And actually, this is a really interesting tell too. If you change this to a line chart, you can actually see the M very well defined here, right? So a really good anecdote of why, a lot of pros actually like to use clotheslines versus, these little FU moves were just like liquidity pushes. And you got to understand that in a esoteric market like copper, this makes complete sense. But yeah, interesting read. Good catch there, sir.
Yeah. So not only do we have the transports breaking down, we got copper breaking down.
Yeah,
I don't know, guys.
That looks definitely disturbing. What was that?
Writing,
right?
Yeah, IYT. Writing looks like it's on the wall.
Yeah, and the problem here, I mean, look at this big old hole in this chart right here, right? So, Jesus, and all these holes here. So, oh man, and you can see how volatile this is, up and down and up and down. This is going to be messy.
Yep.
All right. Fed. See you later, Adam. I just play with you, dude. Rock on. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think Adam is going to do a nice little presentation update on Puerto Rican tax policy while I'm gone too. So you guys look forward to that little presentation by Adam. Zero taxes. There you go. Damn.
If he's still alive.
Yeah. I mean, this is almost like McAfee kind of conversation, eh? And actually, you posted a video about McAfee this morning, didn't you? That was a funny video that he put in. Oh, your good friend? Oh, goodness. All right. Okay, so broader market looking a little bit soft here. Actually, it was interesting in our TRI SOF meeting. We took a look at aluminum again. And I got the impression that aluminum was, and kind of like the same thing as copper. Probably not a bad idea. We'd probably take a look at like Freeport. Let's see what he's looking like. Is he breaking down? Yeah, so you can actually see the copper price action in Freeport here, eh? See how similar that is? If I go HG1 exclamation mark. So Freeport's a really good proxy for copper market. But anyway, the comment I wanted to make about aluminum was I got the impression through sort of the winter there that Mr. Trump was really sort of ramping up. We're going to put China to the screws. We're going to make sure that we get, fair trade and all that. And if you guys notice that since this Mueller report's come out, Mr. Trump has gone very, very quiet. The rhetoric has just totally trailed off. So I'm not quite sure what's happened there, but you can clearly see, we're going to stop the dumping of aluminum into the American market. We're going to make it more competitive, and that is all kind of evaporated here. So really interesting anecdote there. My hunch is if copper and all those base metals start crapping out here, that's not going to help Alcoa. So it's almost like bricks and mortars are really in trouble. In fact, we should probably take a look at the banks. See what our old buddy Mr. Joey Diamond's looking like these days. Interesting. So coming right up against the top end of its range. Actually, not a bad area to think about puts. Especially your conversations about the Fed maybe is on pause now. The econs that I saw coming out recently are pretty poor. These bank stocks usually do the best when they're raising interest rates because it means strong economy, strong consumer demand for loans, yada, yada, yada. Housing market just looking at absolute train wreck, the data coming out there. Of course, I've been trying to, still haven't got my goddamn fills here.
Royal Bank.
Trying to get in on the short side on the Canadian banks. Okay. So I'm still working my bids to buy these put options. And frankly speaking,
Oops. Brian just go bye-bye?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay, that was officially weird. Can you hear me?
Yeah, the Canadian Secret Service kicked you off.
I think so, eh? Somebody said, "Oh, he's talking about shorting banks, so we better kill that call." So I mean, I'm still very interested in building a position here, but the Montreal boys, they're playing hardball with me. They just do not want to give me fills. So anyway,
just go buy puts on Royal Bank on the New York Stock Exchange.
yeah, well, Royal Bank's not the best one. CIBC has the most housing market exposure here in Canada for any Canadians. But that Royal Bank, gee whiz, that looks like a half decent little M trying to form. But can you put in? I think it's CM. Is CIBC down in the States? Yeah, there it is.
Oh yeah, they're traded on the New York Stock Exchange too.
So this is if I was going to short the Canadian banks to play the collapse in the Canadian housing market, this is probably the one that I'd be most interested in.
Yeah, this one doesn't look as bearish though.
Well, zoom out to the top.
Well, yeah. Well,
the problem is that the housing market in Canada is already breaking. So this guy's already broken quite a bit. But the interesting thing is, can you see the massive potential bearish AB equals CD that's starting to form here? I mean, this thing could be monstrous.
Monster kill.
What's that from?
That's from Unreal Tournament.
Like a pinball game or something?
I think it's from Unreal Tournament.
Okay, that sounds so familiar. Anyway, yeah. So there's your AB equals CD. If this Canadian housing market collapses, this guy is like basically the biggest sort of mortgage lender here in Canada locally. You can actually already see the massive M that's already working. So that counter trend rally that came in there a few months ago, it was just nothing more than a check of the actual breakdown level, eh?
Mountain Man, what a dick. Sorry.
That guy's there. He gets around everywhere, eh?
Good Lord.
And Adam, I have a funny feeling he works for the Fed now. So no, I'm just being stupid. Okay, so the point here is that I guess the sell in May and walk away, professor of economics, Dow Transports. We're starting to get a lot of anecdotal evidence here that things might need to take a bit of a pause. I do like the idea of shorting the Canadian banks. I just don't know whether the big trade happens here through May, June, or whether this develops later on through the end of the year. That's a tough one. I'm scratching my head a little bit about the gold price, considering the way those gold stocks are acting. A little bit of a disconnect there, but we'll see what happens. All right. Was interested to see. I don't know how it's looking now. And again, let's maybe refrain from loading up heading into the Fed. But this little shipping stock that Kevin brought to our attention recently, looking really interesting here. I mean, 50% rules, I guess, last summer's peak. And you can see this guy, he can spike very quickly. 50% levels $1.20. So, if we can somehow sneak in down here, we might get a half decent entry. But we've been watching this for a while. And the one that I'm in, but I've just got free shares. I'm not really going to be buying anything more of it. But GLBS, I think it is. It's starting to look really interesting too down here at the bottom. So, little bullish divs, Willie Stupid, OBV looking sexy. Really interesting names. Also, another contrarian name that we were looking at in the TRI-SOF group yesterday, which I think actually I might even just go and grab some myself, just some calls, just to have them on the books, is that Kraft Foods. It was kind of funny in our meeting yesterday. We were going through the news releases, and basically Warren Buffett is like literally just crapping on these guys' heads. Obviously he's a major shareholder. He was incredibly embarrassed by what happened there a month or so ago with this massive write down. They basically took I think it's like a $15 billion charge or something like that against their books, which reported just a horrific earnings number. And Mr. Buffett's just gone into the board and he's just like, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, get the fuck out. So it was just really interesting coming out of the meeting yesterday. I think this is another one of Casey's ideas. He was pricing some leaps, and the $45 calls really, really cheap. Actually a 10 bagger just back to the 50% level. I've got a call coming in here. If it's about Liam, I better get it. So I'm going to put myself on mute. I'll continue talking, please.
All right. Well, we are getting pretty late here in the show, so maybe we should go and move into crypto. I'm just kind of scrolling through names here. I was looking at Nike. I don't know if this thing looks like a proper short or anything that would be interested in buying puts here, but nice volume profile gap. This is really nice lesson in how to use volume profile properly. And of course, if I move my mouse, this thing's going to vanish. But you can see the nice gap here at 50% level, which is exactly where we'd want to see a target on the SOF. Maybe that's something we'll probably look at in the meeting, the Tuesday SOF meeting. But it's funny because, Cramer's advocating buying this thing up in the top end of this range. And ever since he came out with his recommendation, this thing's just been floundering around. So that was interesting to see. And I think this might be one of your plays, Alex, is this Xilinx. This thing came off a big chunk last week, weakness in the 5G space. I don't know what this is about, but wasn't this something you were looking at hyperwaves on, Alex?
Yeah, so you got to go on the weekly chart there to see that, I guess.
So this probably wouldn't have wrecked any kind of idea that this
No,
hyperwave...
I was actually waiting for a pullback to know how steep the ascent would be. So
would you be buying in here?
No.
Okay. Where would you try to buy in on a retrace of a hyperwave?
Well, that depends if you want to really buy into a phase 4 hyperwave. I wouldn't. The way I would treat the phase 4 is I would go to the lower times frames and trade bullish setups there. And the phase 4 on the hyperwave is just one more reason for you to take a trade.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, this thing definitely looks like it's gone pretty far, but either way, it's hard to buy this thing where it is right now. I guess one day we'll have to figure out the best way of getting in on things like that. But nonetheless, it was interesting to see that not even the 5G space.
Semiconductors coming off here, right? Wow, interesting.
What, this Xilinx, is that considered semiconductor? Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, they're into the 5G business, eh?
Yeah, Alex and I were just talking about it being in a potential hyperwave. Alex doesn't think it's a phase 4.
Yeah, it is a phase 4.
It is phase 4. Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
cool.
Maybe. Okay. Well, sorry. That was my Liam's social worker.
Okay.
More bureaucrats.
Yeah. It's interesting. There was somebody that was interested in shorting Chipotle like a couple months ago, and then this thing took off. Yeah. I would argue that now is probably the time to be looking at shorts on this. You got this proper market structure. You've got this div that's now validated itself and then continued itself again. But the problem with buying a put on this thing, so look at this. Look how much a 6-month dated put on Chipotle is. I mean, it's just like you got to shell out 5 or 6 figures just for one contract, I bet. So if I were to buy the 50% level, let's just go by, what are we in May? So scroll out to May. Let's call it this low. Is that too far? Well, we'll see. So 50% level would be 480. So let's say I bought the $540 puts. Let's see how much those things cost. We're going to do all, and this is probably a waste of time, but it's funny to see how much these things cost. So the 540 puts into December are $12.80, which I guess isn't terrible. But there's no interest on this thing. That's incredible. A big stock like this, look how bare this options chain is. That's incredible.
And what series are you looking at there? Sorry.
December.
November. Yeah, probably December. Go to the Decembers or the leaps.
Yeah,
probably.
maybe the leaps, because I just had December on. January's not quite that much better, but it's $14.
Okay, all right. So I see 611 there at 480. That's
Yeah.
there's six. Ooh, interesting. 668 at 400. Yeah. So it looks to me like the institutions are thinking like, what did we say, 640 or 680 or whatever.
Yeah. So they got 2021s on here.
Man, I bet those cost a fortune though.
Yeah, what are the 540s? $37. Blah.
What's the stock right now? What's the 50% level?
50% levels 485. What was I was looking at
485. Well, that's not bad. Those would be worth what's $55 or so.
Yeah.
So yeah, but no doubt about it. Playing these expensive stocks, oh boy, the option premiums can get ridiculous.
Yeah, so if you buy one contract, you got to shell out $37.50 for it.
Yeah, it's a lot of burritos.
That's $3,750, not $37.50, despite what this says. You'll learn that in level 3.
That should be multiplied by 100, so it should be $3,700. Is that what you said?
Yeah, $3,750.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to crypto.
Probably way beyond any of our shopping ranges. So.
All right.
Okay. What do you think? Should we do crypto now?
Yeah, let's talk about this Bitcoin whale who moves $211 million worth of Bitcoin as market conditions approve. This is a weird article because when you actually read into it, this guy was just sending this money from wallet to wallet into a SegWit approved wallet, it seems like. And they're trying to figure out if this had anything to do with a market movement. Did this have anything to do with a tether dip? And the article itself just says that, oh, you know what, maybe I have this wrong. So they sent their entire wallet balance, which they held from February 2018, which was the 21st richest wallet, until the 22nd of April, when it dropped to the 22nd richest. It seems the sender was just moving all the BTC from an older wallet to a new one. That's what I thought it was. And both wallets have this BECH32 address, which means, from what I understand, might be SegWit or something along the lines of new protocol that's supposed to be better for your transfer of coins, faster, less fees, etc. And there's a lot of speculation about where these coins ended up. Did it impact the movement? Oh, look, here's a quote from Tom Lee. The expectation is so high because the surge has been predicted by several key industry persons that Bitcoin has been demonstrated that it's fully done with a crypto winter when it bounced back after the tether dip, according to Tom Lee. Man, this guy gets everywhere. Anyway, so that's what's going on. Crypto whale moving money around. Okay, fine. We can speculate about whether or not that moves the price. I don't really want to spend more time on that. Let's do some more Tether FUD. So only 74% of Tether seems to be backed by fiat, which is funny because in the lounge here, David Davis posted a nice little comparison for us to try to figure out, well, how much money is actually backed by governments or Tether or JP Morgan? And he's quoting a Max Kaiser post, and he said, Tether is 74% backed, Fed is 1% backed, and JP Morgan is minus 20% unbacked. So I think it's just funny that everyone's shitting all over Twitter. And rightfully so, right? They kind of lie to everyone, but so does the Fed, and so does JP Morgan. So is this really any different than what all these other institutions and governments are doing? Probably not. But what they're doing is playing with retail money. And, whether you want to admit it or not, they are violating some law here that they're not adhering to what they promised, that, hey, every tether is backed by exactly $1 in their bank account. But interesting nonetheless, 74% backed compared to 1% Fed. Next article here is by the English bank governor, talks about how he doesn't believe that cryptocurrencies are going to be a threat to financial stability because they're way too volatile to be a store of value. So I think that's good. Is this Mark? Is this that current? No, this is Dave Ramsden. But as long as government officials look at crypto and they don't see it as a big problem, that's great. They won't squash it anytime soon. But who is this guy and what is he really going to be able to do to something like this as an English bank governor? The answer is probably not much. But it is interesting to see what England's their bank governor is thinking. Next one here is a Forbes article about millennials, and this really shouldn't come to a surprise to anyone, that millennials prefer crypto over regular assets, which is funny, but kind of goes along with, hey, millennials don't really carry much cash in their wallet or physical valuables. We just seem to be the minimalist lifestyle, and we don't want antiques in our house. We don't want anything that takes up space, because the minimalistic architecture and style is the cleanest and most visually pleasing. And what it makes perfect sense that crypto, something you can't hold in your hand realistically, something you can just have out in the internet, and the vast tubes of the internet can exist outside the realm of physicality, fits perfectly into this lifestyle. But it is interesting
and
to
it
see
makes sense too, right? Because you can't really touch Facebook, can you?
like, how
I
can
mean,
you
I
touch?
suppose you could touch Zuckerberg, but that's another conversation altogether.
Yeah, that's a
But
secular
that's sort
too.
of the society that we live in now, that people actually don't really have a problem. They uh almost, like if it's on your cell phone and you can hold up your cell phone and show somebody it, then it's real. um so yeah, I understand this argument. And I might, the irony of it all is that actually when I first got into the stock business, we were all required to read, oh God, what's that famous book? How to Sell Intangible Assets, I think it's called. And it was written back in the 1930s on how you sell something that really isn't tangible. You can't really hold on to it, like stocks. The whole idea of stocks is the same sort of thing. So, at best, you can hold a stock certificate that shows that, hey, look, I own 1,000 shares in this company, whatever. God, it's a famous book. I'm surprised it slipped my mind. But it's all about the sales industry and selling assets that don't really exist. Anyway, so are you poking fun at me again, Adam? Fed, 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 fed. Okay, so sorry to interrupt, but the point is that I totally can understand this argument. Totally.
Yeah, the only other takeaway from this article is that US citizens who had no clue about what Bitcoin was in 2017, that number decreased from 23% to 11%. So more awareness, not surprising, but who are those 11%? And where are they, like, what ditch are they living in? Whatever, that's a different conversation.
They're on a golf course in Arizona.
Could be. So I got this article from somebody in the community who wanted me to cover this. I don't know if I can call it a partnership. I guess it's not. It's really this game company called Chronoverse, who was invested by this guy named Calvin Ayre. And this video game company decided they wanted to build this project. And I apologize if I got this wrong, but they decided to build this project on top of the Bitcoin Satoshi Vision blockchain. That's Craig Wright's blockchain, or Craig Wright's token, whatever the hell you want to call it. And they liked what it was. They thought it was exactly what their video game needed to be built upon. And they secured this big investment from Calvin Ayre. And I guess a couple people believe that Bitcoin Cash could end up, this Bitcoin SV, excuse me, or whatever, BSV, could eventually be worth something because of this partnership. It is interesting to kind of, entertain that idea, because ever since Satoshi, or fake Satoshi, excuse me, whatever the hell he's calling himself nowadays, ever since he came out and was like, oh, I'm Satoshi, and anyone who thinks I'm not, I'm going to sue them, and yada, yada. And then I guess it was not Bittrex, what's the other one? Binance. Binance and Kraken both decided to unlist this thing from their exchanges, and this thing's just tanked. And I remember like a week or two ago, I was looking at this thing and I was like, I guess it doesn't look half bad to buy it. And this thing's really not done much since that time. Is this enough of a fundamental driver to push this thing higher? I don't know. Like, looking at this chart, sure doesn't look good to me, right? This 13 EMA is acting as solid resistance to the upside. This looks like it's about to put in another leg to the downside. and it just doesn't look great. Like maybe if we lose these lows or we have to retest this $44 level, it just, I don't know. I can't kind of get on board here that I want to buy this thing just yet. It did look entertaining, but I never pulled the trigger on it. Let me see what this thing looks like on OKX. If they
Yeah,
even
just what I was just going to mention that, you know, the price data on Phoenix is a little bit funky. I wonder whether we should maybe be looking at this thing on other exchanges to get a sort of a real idea. Mind
Yeah.
you, it's not all listed on many other exchanges.
Yeah, the problem is trying to find what's the stupid, you know, they've all changed their ticker symbols on this stupid thing. Okay, I can see it here on my OKX account. They're calling it BSV0628. So let's see if that can be brought up on here. 06.
Oh, that would be like the June contract or something.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
not.
interesting. So, OK Coin's trading these esoteric product forwards now.
Yeah, they have been, and they actually specifically came out and said that they were not going to delist this product from their site. So I can see actually the chart on my console here. Let me see what this chart looks like. I'll let you know if it looks anything different than Finex. You'll just have to
Interesting, but it's still listed there on Trex. Yeah, funny.
Yeah. So this looks pretty similar to the Finex chart. It's trading at about $54 right now. And you've got that same issue on the daily with this potential market structure top coming in. It looks like it validated already, kind of like here. You see this top to the left, and it's playing around with that neckline on Bitcoin, on OKX as well. How many
what I
people
was going to suggest is, if you don't mind, is do an AB equals CD, which would give us a nice little FU move against those lows. Yeah. So if we go boobity shmoo to there, and then boobity coo to there, that's probably where I think this thing's going.
Yeah, I just don't like this thing. I can't buy it still.
Isn't that funny? Because Charlie Lee, I think that's his name, Mr. Litecoin, right? He said, "Oh, I'll buy Litecoin at $20." Maybe he meant BSV.
Well, didn't Litecoin go down to $20?
Yeah. So, you know, maybe $20 is the magic number for cryptos. I don't know.
Buy all the crypto at $20.
But if anything, what I think, you know, this is an excellent anecdote of, and I love this about you, Thomas. It's so fucking awesome. Is you understand this concept of divergence. You know, hopefully everybody can see this bull div. I don't know whether I'm sharing my screen or not, but you can see this bull div came in and confirmed right here. So, okay, you know, Willie's stupid. The divergence is confirmed. It's gone through the zero line, which Thomas likes. You can see the volume coming in here. So you want to hunt longs to play this move. Okay, that's fine there. But let's look at today. You see how right now it almost looks like we're in this part, right, where it's gone up, you know, so maybe we'll change that to like purple or something. And if we apply that same here, you can see we've gone straight up, but where is that second part? And remember we talked to, you know, I don't know whether we have any level oneers in here. Dennis, you just did this. Do you see how this, yeah, the price is making lows, right? And actually it really didn't, but this is a V. It's not a W. And you need this sort of dump, and then it carves out the W, and okay, rock on divergence. So what I'm seeing here right now, and I just saw this on Thomas's screen, is okay, Willie's stupid, but where's the div? And if we got like a nice little dump, you know, to new lows, really break some hearts here. I don't know whether we have to go all the way down there or not, but then turn back up violently, that will start painting our divs. And then as bulls, we can start getting excited. So actually, Alicia's here. So Alicia, can you see the difference? Can you see what it's doing now? And can you see how this divergence developed? It needed another sort of test of the lows. And, you know, just the easiest way to remember this is just think about your grade 3 English teacher, right? We want to see those W's nice and well defined. So we just don't have it here yet. And this looks dangerous because it could easily just puke out here and go after these lows right here, and you get some sort of panic capitulation. Very, very dangerous market, in my opinion.
Yeah, screw this thing.
Okay, enough said. All right. Actually, now that we're on crypto, a couple things I wanted to kind of point out. First off, and Benjamin, I think you're over there on the YouTube page. Joshua was distributing. Benjamin, I think, has written a altcoin index that's based on the fundamentally top screened names. And Joshua shared this with me yesterday. So I've added to sort of my shortcoin indexes that we like to follow. And I think this isn't a bad index to keep an eye on. You can clearly see the well-defined M that came up here, which is sort of defined our recent malaise in the altcoin space. Bring. And also, too, you can see the very well-defined bottom that actually defined our sort of 420 anticipatory rally. So, I think that's a really cool tool that I've added to my sort of repertoire here, my analysis. And I would highly suggest all of you, if you can. I think that's your index, isn't it, Benjamin? I think it is. So, something to keep an eye on. And, just very simply put, it's interesting, beautiful W's there. It's interesting how we V-bottomed here, V-bottomed here. I would really like to see a nice, well-defined W here. So I don't know whether we have the makings of a bottom there yet or not. We'll keep an eye on that. Nice to see that the spreads, and, if anything, an excellent anecdote for all of you guys to just sort of, what are some of the tools that I can add to my tool belt that can sort of help me see what the sort of sentiment in the market is? And it's interesting to see, Litecoin, of course, is our sort of leader heading into his halving event. It's interesting to see how he's trying desperately to turn here. So let's keep a close eye on good old Litecoin. And also, too, not a bad idea. Alex really liked to follow this. This is the spread between Phoenix and I think it's Stamp I have on here. I'm not exactly sure. No, that's not right. What is the index we have here? So I'm looking at Phoenix versus Stamp. Yeah. So, this is probably a really good tell as to the health of the Tether sort of debate. If this thing keeps cranking higher, I think it means that the Tether issue is not put to bed yet. This thing starts breaking down and spreads start to come back in. I do notice on Twitter, a lot of the Twitter kids are talking about this now, which is a typical tell that they've actually missed the move. They should have been talking about it here, but now they're all squawking about it up here. End of move, classic sort of scenario. Interesting on Thomas's screen there, I see. Maybe we can jump over there. I see the biggest, fattest double divergence, double Ds. Oh, my goodness. On Litecoin here on his 4-hour chart. So tell us what you're seeing there, sir.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little anxious about this Litecoin situation because I think this thing is broken down. If you look at the daily chart, you can see this market.
Look at that divergence, though. Son of a bitch.
Oh, is this a... Yeah, look at that. Bull divergence.
Yeah.
It's a weird level for this thing to be rallying, though. But nonetheless, this thing does look like it's trying to recapture whatever ground it's lost here. Market structure top, retesting bottom of the neckline. The question we all have to ask ourselves, does this have enough oomph to break above this market structure top on the daily? Right now, we've got that potential. We do have a confirmed bull div right now. This is broken above that neckline. I like
and keep it. That's a daily chart, though, so be careful because if the Fed comes out and shits on us, and price collapses here, that div might be taken away from us.
Yeah, you're right. Today is the confirmation. And again, I still like above the zero line. So in my book, I'm not playing this just yet, but I'm a little concerned just because I'm expecting this to bounce back up here. And however this resolves itself, I really do think that this thing's going to continue rolling down.
And a really good anecdote here, trend line. If you do a trend line off of that peak from early April, really LJs, we'd really like to see that trend line broken and then market structure on the other side of the trend line. So yes, we have a bull div, and sort of like what we talk about in the education program, that's one reason. But I guess you could argue, you could probably do a fib off of that recent high back down to those March lows. That might be reload zone-ish. But maybe we have trade location that's developing here. You can see the notch in the profile, but we're just now, and the divergences are starting to form. But now we have to wait for the W's, right? And of course, Brian and his bot, I actually like to have 3 lows to work with. So we've got 1 low here. Great, awesome. But I totally agree with you. It looks to me like this thing needs some time to continue to clean itself up. But if anything, I guess with regard to the spreads and now seeing the divergences, maybe it feels like, going in and shorting Litecoin right here, probably not the best idea. And if I'm not mistaken, on my little matrix of bot setups, I don't know whether you can see on my screen here or not, but I don't know. I think I even posted earlier that yes, we had move stop to trailing level hit. This violent move here to me feels as though anybody who was taking this bot short probably should have hopped off, because that would have broken moving averages, and maybe stop to trailing levels against these highs might have been tripped up on this bar right here. There is that double divergence that we were just talking about there a few minutes ago. So I agree with you, Thomas. It's a little too early for us to go, oh fuck it, man, everything's going straight up here. But at the same time too, I think we're very late in this down move here. So all right, so I apologize for interrupting. Continue, sir.
Oh, no interruption. I was just looking at Ethereum Classic and wondering why this looks so similar to Litecoin. Same problem. So I'm really jazzed about trying to pick this thing up, but I really want to be buying this much lower, which kind of goes along with what we were looking at Litecoin. So maybe this market just needs to cool off a lot more before we can really buy into that name. So
but we don't have a divergence there yet, eh? So, and actually it's interesting for those people that play the stock market, super jazzed about, and actually I noticed this morning a lot of the blockchain stocks are actually starting to catch a bid. So, maybe we are, closer to the bottom than the top. But what I noticed was, I'm super interested in Ethereum to pick up for my stock account. But I even publicly said I can't really buy ETC. Did I say Ethereum? I apologize. Ethereum Classic. Can't really justify buying it until it works its way back down here. So, oh, man, that's tough. I couldn't buy that. But maybe if we're lucky, it just goes nice and sideways and carves out a nice little bot setup to trade this thing. But all right, and I'd be interesting. Maybe you could fire that up. It's ETCG, and what do you see off of the stock itself?
sorry, I cut out. What was the question?
If you could just throw up ETCG, which is the stock, and just what are your thoughts there? Because you were interested in the ETC, you said there a moment ago.
I mean, the stock, it's bullish.
Guess you're gone.
Yeah, maybe that's Big Brother telling us we're talking too much. Sorry, guys. I don't think we sort of hear you a little bit, but I'm just going to put myself on mute. Maybe if you want to just wrap up what you're thinking, maybe changing the charts and stuff is screwing with the Google Hangout. I don't know.
Okay, can you hear me at all?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, so I'm bringing up this ETCG, looks overbought. Potential, I guess this is a bear div here. That's confirmed. Looks crappy. I guess this thing could potentially W. It could also M out. The trade will be in whichever direction this thing breaks. So kind of along the lines of Brian here. But I do think, this thing just needs to come back down. All these names look like they need to come back down for now. So that's that. I did want to quickly go over Bitcoin and Ethereum. Bitcoin on the daily chart looks dangerously head and shouldersy right now. This is the Coinbase chart. You can see shouldery left shoulder, right shoulder, or head. And then this is a really poor drawing that a third grader could do a better job of. But that looks like this thing's forming right now. But you don't really have any divs. You don't have any structure to play with. So you kind of have to wait for this thing to break below 5140 on Coinbase for that to come true. What does this look like on our forwards contracts? Same. Oh, I already have the head and shoulders drawn. Well, look at that. So same idea here. Moving averages are getting close to crossing. I think if today turns into a down day and the fact that we're going into Fed day, that maybe this could all just be a fake out to the upside, depending on how that resolves itself again. So Bitcoin, I think, is hands off for the rest of the day here. I think we started to see that yesterday where the move kind of popped us up just a little bit more after New York Kill Zone again. And now we're just messing around. Like, we're in no man's land. We're at 50% level. We're touching the 50 moving average. The 13 and the 30 have crossed bullishly again on the 4 hour. No bear divs, no bull divs. Willie's getting to be overbought. Do we get one more push higher to give us a nice bear div? Potentially. Maybe this thing has a little bit more left in the tank to the upside. I'm not seeing the weakness I'd like to see in the shorting. The hourly chart, kind of looks like you had this bear div, but it didn't really play out, at least not yet. This candle here looks very suspect for a bear play. So I'd be really, really careful to the downside right now.
Look at your crackhead, though.
Yeah, he's trying to poke out again.
Yeah, I mean, for whatever it's worth, Algo went uber bull. All three were bullish, but the signal for me actually fires after when the 1 hour actually, if the 4 hour and the 2 hour are up, I have to wait for the next hourly signal. And you can see what price action is doing here. This could actually fire an algo trade for me here. So we'll see how this goes. You can see the levels that I've marked off here, and you can see the very strong price action here on Stamp. The issue here, of course, is this sort of like a buy the rumor ahead of the Fed announcement, anticipating some sort of colossal statement from them. I don't know. I mean, I'm vetting out my algo, so I mean, I'll be taking the signal anyway to see what happens. But I don't know, man. It feels to me like this thing wants to pop here. But you can see the risk reward. Ironically enough, the algo is going to be liquidating half of the position if this signal fires here, just on a test of these previous highs. I could very easily see that happen. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're off to the races, a new big bull market. I will say one thing, though, which actually is kind of it's surprised me a little bit, is those that are really patient and really disciplined. We now have 1 kilo, 2 kilos. There was the first algo signal off of this massive bot. They brought the market was working. It's and this is a massive higher time frame on. You can see the amount of risk involved, like $400 a coin. Market went up, came back down, did not break this W here. We've now got what I would consider 3 solid lows to risk against. And here we are right back at that bot entry level. So it's fascinating to see how the algo is trying to turn back to the bull side here once again, right off of that really important level. So fascinating, absolutely fascinating right now. And I may be posting in the lounge, algos spitting up buy signal. I'll be hunting longs here. And you can see the structure that the signal is trying to develop off of. Really cool stuff. I'm just going to put my opinions away. And, you know, I'm vetting out this setup, so we'll see what happens. Only time will tell. All right, what are you seeing on Ethereum? Jesus, that momentum looks horrible.
Yeah, the momentum looks crappy on the daily, but this thing looks like it needs to pop a little bit too. I mean, if Bitcoin's going to pop up, this thing's going to get carried up probably to the 168 level. I had a short working yesterday. I think I remember saying I didn't like the way the thing looked. I was looking, I guess this fib has been adjusted since yesterday's level, but you know, I didn't like the way it looked yesterday. I think I even remember saying I hated the way it looked. And I was looking for like a 38.2 test. We got a little bit of a pullback after New York close, or right around New York close. And then it just said, nah, no, and didn't even touch 38.2 and just popped higher. That's what you set stops for, people. Otherwise, you get your ass handed to you. So that was stopped out. And then you had this move up to about 164. And that's interesting because that's 50% of this bigger range here. And then lo and behold, we're sitting at the same 50% level of all these other names. Does this thing need to continue up to 168? Tag that mountain man level? It is interesting that the hourly hasn't filled in this gap here on volume profile. But there is another gap sitting up here. Is that what needs to happen going forward? It almost feels like it does, especially, again, if Bitcoin's going to drag this thing up. I don't know if I can advocate like a solid setup to buy this thing going up, because I don't really like the way this thing's setting up. Yeah, sure, if this thing pops above your 162 and you had a nice div to work with, or you had something else, I just don't see it. Like maybe you've got this OBVW to play with, but the RSI, yeah, that's like V-bottomy here on RSI. Willie's kind of in no man's land too. And, you know, it feels like what a bullish market should be. These kind of washy signals where you're in this like sort of upward trending hourly signal market that doesn't have a reason to pull back yet. And that to me is the hallmark of a short-term bullish market. But I don't know how short-term this could be. Like maybe this thing will be over tomorrow. You get a big quick pop and then it's bye-bye. But you can see neckline here on Ethereum's, again, 168 to 171. Maybe that's what we need to test. 200 period moving average might be hard to get through. Maybe this is the level. It's really hard to say for a guy like me, right? I mean, if you didn't capture this thing, you're just kind of stuck.
For whatever it's worth, you know, Ethereum commentary had a bearish bot working, move stop to trailing. We had talked about this on the Broiler Chicken show. Now this actually is painting a W for me here. So I think, you know, the shorts kind of, they've been told to just cool their jets. I actually really like on your chart, notice that 88.6 is right off those candle body lows, 78.6, 88.6, right against those candle body lows there, which you know, to me looks like a very interesting trade location if you were hunting shorter time frame setups. One thing I was just going to mention before it gets away from me here, I remember specifically on the release of the Fed minutes that the market actually moved higher following the Fed minutes announcement. And then like literally on the New York close, beep, basically market printed a high and then just absolutely tanked. So don't be surprised, guys, if we actually see a bit of a pop in crypto here. And then right on the close, that's actually when we start to see the fireworks. So be careful there. You know, looking at Ethereum, I think there was an AB equals CD that was sort of hit and validated here. So probably any guys that were hunting longs, you know, through this area here, they had their profit objectives hit. But as I said just a moment ago, really interesting if we just, I was just seeing this on Thomas's chart. Notice Brian loves his candle body lows for trade location. Notice this funny little candle right in here. There's a bunch of trap bears sitting in there that would love to be released. 78.6. And then also too, notice if we zoom way out that this is a pretty important trend line going back all the way to the original lows there. So this trend line, in my opinion, you can see it came down, tested it, moved away, came down, tested it, move away. I could very easily see us come back down to this level again here. So if I was trading like really lower time frames, like say hourly or something, I think I would be really interested in hunting a long setup down in this area down in here. But
I don't think you're presenting your screen there.
oh, I'm sorry, everybody. Did I screw that up? There's that trend line I was just talking about a moment ago. Here, I'll sort of make that a bit thicker so you can see. This trend line goes all the way back to the original bottom. All the way back, way back. She's going. The ball game's over. I'm sorry. There's that original trend line off of those lows right there. And in essence, that's what the market's playing off of right now. So, if you are interested in the longs, I'd be very interested to hunt, sort of setups down in this area off the lower time frames. But at the same time, too, what I'm worried about, it's very iffy. And I think Thomas's words of caution here are warranted. A lot of mixed messages. And then, of course, we also have the Fed coming up. I think probably what we need to do, of course, we have to wait for like an hour after the Fed announcement, which is basically going to take us into the close. I like the idea of sort of just letting the dust settle here. And actually can't really see too well off of that chart. Letting the dust settle here. And, if you want to hunt longs against these candle body lows and that reload zone and that trend line, that's not a bad area to be thinking. If we're thinking trend continuation, then I want to see this build out, develop a bit more, and then a push higher. So probably a little too early to be a buyer for me. And if anything, probably a little too late to be a seller. You should have been a seller up there. So. All right. Anything else you wanted to comment? Yeah, look at the moving averages all coming together. I mean, this is definitely an apex event on Thomas's screen. So get ready for some fireworks. If this thing turns up from these levels, we're probably going to see this act as support going forward. So this is a real apex event here, I think. So. Okay, well, we're 20 past the hour, so what do you think? Shall we call it a day?
What kind of day should we call it?
Why don't we call it a, I can't think of anything funny off the top of my head. Very drunk day. There you go. Adam, you have to read that screen 10 times. There you go. So, and actually this is, I think it's actually really cool how, crypto here is coming to a massive apex event right on this Fed day. I think that's really interesting. So student of the market kind of talk here. Okay, so as that's probably a really good way to end the broadcast. Everybody can clearly see what's on Thomas's mind. And of course, it should be on your minds too. Fed day, Fed day, Fed day. Ah! All right, Mr. Mayor, what do you think? Did we do a half decent job for these people?
Yes, sir.
All right. Any closing thoughts, Mr. Bear, or should we just read your screen?
I mean, Adam's still able to type clearly, so I think we got to put another Fed day in there.
Okay. All right, guys. Why don't we call it a day? Thank you very much for your participation. Hope you enjoyed the broadcast. Got some good usable information out of this. Value. Thank you, Joshua. Have yourselves a great day, everybody. Mr. Mayor, if you could take us out of here, I'd love you for it. All the best. And the only thing left for Brian to say at this time is bye.